You should be good to go, Paul.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to talk about from generation to action, the rise of agentic AI. We have a fantastic lineup of presenters today. So we're going to start out. We've got Lieutenant Colonel Updegraff. He's representing us from the CDAO for DHA. We also have Tad Tatro, Deputy Chief Technology Officer, Deputy Chief AI Official with USCIS. And we have Mia Jordan joining us from our great partner Salesforce today to talk about how Salesforce can meet the Agentic AI challenge. A couple of things to note, just a little bit of housekeeping. We want to make sure that our presenters are able to present clearly, so please keep your cameras and mics off. If you have questions, we do want to get to them during the Q&A section of our presentation. So just post your questions to the chat, and we'll curate them and get the panel to address them once we get there. Let's see, any other housekeeping? I think that is it. So that being said, Agentic AI goes beyond traditional automation or even large language models. Everybody's been talking about generative AI for the past couple of years, but the big advantages that we are going to get are going to be from Agentic AI. And that's where we have agents that are doing things for us automatically. They're learning about how to get things done effectively and efficiently and operate within our constraints. So just a quick check real quick. Did we get Chad? Did Chad make it into the call?
You sure did. You sure did.
All right.
Good morning. Or good afternoon.
All right, we have a full panel then. So, all right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and get started. And we're going to start first with Lieutenant Commander Updegraff. Thank you for joining us. I got a couple of questions for you. The first one would be, we've heard a lot about generative AI. Now everyone's switching towards agentic AI. What do you see? Do you see a role for machine learning and generative AI in the future, or do you see everything moving towards agentic AI in the healthcare space?
No role at all. Next question. Just kidding. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, so I'm Lieutenant Colonel Colby Updegraff. I'm with the DHA's Chief Data Analytics Office. So one of the little CDAOs, not the big DoD CDAO, which you've probably seen in the news lately around some pretty large AI-related contracts that have been announced recently. So to answer your question with the DHA focus and really military health system focus, yes, 100%. I think before we get there to being able to truly leverage really any AI modality, we have to first mature as an organization from a data standpoint, really have a data maturity growth. This was done really over the past year or two of assessing our data maturity, and the next stage is actually now planning a roadmap of how to get to a more mature state, though, so that we can fully leverage all AI capabilities, agentic or otherwise. And we're not there yet, and that we probably won't be there for and it'll be disparate. There's some areas are mature, there's some areas are not mature, so it'll be disparate of different areas that can accelerate faster than others in leveraging agentic AI. At a high level, what I think this will look like once we get to a proper data maturity standpoint is, and I know this is fairly cliche probably at this point, but bringing humanism back to medicine in some ways, sort of the irony of being able to leverage AI to bring back what medicine used to be, which was more about the provider-patient interaction and having a solid experience with the healthcare system. So what does that really mean? That really means enabling the different providers and clinicians to operate at the top of their medical licensure, provider, nurse, tech, or otherwise, so that they can focus on the human interactions within healthcare. So this really what this means, automating the administrative tasks, the redundant tasks, the stuff that we did not go, speaking for myself, to medical school for. Did not go to medical school to be a secretary, to be a biller, to be a coder. I went to medical school to see patients and to help them where they are in their time of need. And that's really the humanism aspect of medicine that's been overtaken by the reality of for the most part, modern EHRs, which that's a whole nother story of how we got to be where we are with EHRs in the meaningful use era, the massive and rapid adoption of electronic health records really in the 2010s to now. With the DHA focus, military health system focus, this is really going to, and we have even more administrative requirements that we expect of our providers due to the overlay of the fact that every military provider, if you're seeing those men and women in uniform, is also expected to be essentially an occupational medicine provider too, in the form of medical readiness. Medical readiness is really a form of occupational medicine, which has its own requirements. Administrative occupational requirements that are different by the services. And these requirements are, of course, all written in PDFs or static documents everywhere that in the context of a 20-minute appointment, you don't have time to know all these requirements, know when they're updated, and how to actually apply them to the unique situation of the patient or the unique occupation overlaid with whatever diagnosis, medications, limitations that they may have due to whatever medical condition they're there to see you for. And so leveraging, this is really focusing in Garrison right now, leveraging Agentic AI to assist with that type of automation to queue up. Obviously keeps the humans in the loop. It's really sort of a form of clinical decisions, both support and task automation, sort of the combination of both to really allow then providers to again focus back on that human interaction. And then speaking not in Garrison, but deploy settings, the role 2, role 3 segment 2-3. This is where I think the true agent side, the true specialist agent that you sort of read about of, having a specialized agent workforce where our frontline technicians or IDMTs, those sort of specialized technicians that are really functioning as a provider on the front lines, they may not have access to the specialists, particularly like at the point of injury, forward deployed, of having really on-prem, limited connectivity in austere locations to be able to have these types of agents that can help them make decisions that really require, a highly specialized trained, we'll say cardiologist, surgeon, whatever type of injury that they have requiring unique specialties that they're, of course, just a hyper trained technician. They don't have that extensive years of training, but having these agents to help with that support at the time of care when they don't have access, I think is going to be, my suspicion, a push in the agentic AI era for the military health system. So yeah, sorry, that was a long answer. So I'll stop there.
It's okay. I think it gives us some really great insight into some of the challenges and use cases that you would use in healthcare. I've got a couple follow-up questions if we have time. So just really quickly, the first one would be around the data. I see most people are going to run into this challenge where we're like really excited about hey, let's move forward. Let's grab this agentic AI or generative AI or machine learning and just roll with it and get some benefit for our organizations. But then they have to pump the brakes when they get to the data problem. So what are two or three of the top things that you would suggest to people that are making this journey for preparing their data?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm, full disclosure, new in this role and not very technical. I can, build an app with the best of them, but complex data engineering pipelines are, outside my technical expertise. But speaking, more of a functional with limited technical back-end experience at this point, there's so many data silos with disparate teams that have ownership of different pools of data across our enterprise without clear, well-documented methodologies on how to combine, normalize, and then build semantic layer definitions on essentially how to make sense of it to apply to appropriate metrics and dashboards. And so, I mean, it's the first step is taking an inventory of what in the world you actually have, which is harder than you think, particularly in an enterprise the size of the military health system, and an enterprise that's been around as long as it has and has slowly grown these silos, right? It's easier to stand up a silo than to integrate with an existing data owner. And so that's really the first step is how to identifying the silos. And then it's connecting, how to actually connect, build, either connect existing or build a new data model. So we've trying to adopt this common data model, which I'm still learning about myself in full disclosure, so that we can best query, understand, and then normalize the data across all these different pools and data sources. And so, we in the MHS, we have many different sources right now that we're trying to make sense of, and combine, normalize, create measures, which then inform different dashboards and metrics, and then making them actually actionable is a challenge in and of itself too. So once you get to the point of inventorying, being able to combine, normalize, build a semantic layer on top of that to make sense of it, then it's actually building a mechanism to make it any insights actionable. So yes, you may have an understanding of what's going on, but what are the actual steps needed in order to turn maybe bad behavior at the clinical level into the behavior that you want to achieve whatever policy objective or strategic objective that metric or data is linked to. So like take access to care, right? You can get all the data all combined from different sources, from purchase care, your MTF care, but how do you improve the actual access to care? And that's like where I think the AI is going to come into, is providing those insights of very complex behavior that's going on at the individual user, individual location, MTF level, to then provide insights on how to actually correct the behavior that you're trying to correct in order to achieve whatever policy objective. I think because that's what's really hard, and I think that's what senior leaders have poor visibility on now. Even if you have very mature data, it's on how do you actually then make sense of it and turn it into some type of actionable, executable insight at the ground level.
All right, thank you. All right, just to keep us on time, I'm going to move over to customs and integration, and Chad is going to talk a little bit. Chad, you've got a couple of PowerPoints here. If you want to say a couple of words, I'll let you dive into that, and then I've got a couple of questions for you as well.
Sure. The reason why I put these together, I always like to leave people with something of value, and we put a lot of hard work at DHS into I think we actually identified it as the AI public sector playbook. It was released in January, and I highly recommend. I don't know if we're going to throw up a link after or during this, but I recommend taking a good read at that. I think it's really helpful. And my why on that is, as we move into this space federally, and it was interesting for me just to talk about definitions, right? It's like AI ML. I'm actually sitting here in Boston. I was at an MIT event and the CDO Boston Leadership Convention this week. So the two questions on the table in everybody's mind is, what are these differences between AI, ML, agents, agentic? So I was like, oh, well, this is really pretty perfect. I put this slide together a couple of days ago. So the left side of the slide is just basic definitions, which you'll find that we don't all agree on these definitions. But and I was sitting with the nerdiest of nerds from MIT last night. It was fascinating because we struggled, and the one thing that we agreed on is that agentic AI will truly be able to operate autonomously and will have agency, just like we give humans agency. And that is like probably the hardest, most riskiest, I feel like, and needs the most guardrails and protections. And we'll probably get into that during this conversation. But I love the concept of AI agents and giving our workforce superpowers, because that's what agents actually do. You can really augment your workforce and they can become force multipliers. So I put this together. The adoption core quick tips over there on the right. So if you're working with your executives, those four were really fundamental. You'll actually read about them in the playbook, and they were really valuable. And what was I probably won't go over much of the next slide, but I just wanted to, So this groundwork, because I think we're all struggling with this. I'm a builder. I'm a product builder. It's what I do. It's not always easy, especially in this space. There's a lot of concern, and there's a perception of high risk, but there are some really great techniques to mitigate those risks. And again, those will both be some of those tips will be in that document. But what you'll find is that you probably have a little bit of a head start more than you might have thought, because if you're cloud native or you're already building in the cloud, a lot of your underlying security and architecture is going to seamlessly fit integrating AI. So I wanted to just leave folks with this. I'm happy to talk about the slides, but I bet there's like some real more fun questions than boring slides. But I did want to put something up on the screen.
I think that sets the framework pretty well. So USCIS and you, quite honestly, have been well publicized for pushing the envelope on adopting technology as far as the government's concerned. You guys did it with DevSecOps, you did it with the cloud, and now it looks like you're doing it with AI. So the first question I have is, how do you balance that innovative speed with your federal compliance and security requirements? That's one of the first things I get asked anytime I talk about AI to the government.
Love your CISO. Okay, so like get some T-shirts made up and just say, "I love my CISO." Put it right on front of your shirt. It's a half joke, half serious. DevSecOps is painful. So I'm not somebody who sits here and loves to tell you how beautiful and sweet and wonderful it is. I like to give you pain points. So DevSecOps is really hard because we're all looking at this thing that we want to do from our individual views, right? Devs have a very specific view, right? They want to build the thing right now. Your security folks, they want to protect the thing, right? They want to protect your agency. And then your operators, they're struggling to figure out, like, how do I pay for all this compute, right? And so when you bring that group together, you need to be really mindful that they need to be there from the beginning. And because if you want to innovate fast, you can't have that friction down the road. You need to address those things up front. And I love being a maverick. I love moving forward fast. But this is not a time where you can just do that without, I hate these catchy terms, but without being secure by design. But that's where, like, when I was talking about, if you already have if you're already in the cloud, and if you're already taking advantage of, for instance, FedRAMP based services, you probably have a significant head start with being able to innovate and bring AI into your environments, because from a compliance and security aspect, you've probably already addressed a lot of those. Same with privacy. Like our privacy group, probably should say love your privacy folks as well, because they're actually trying to help protect you and moving this work forward. And so bringing those teams together early makes a really big difference, versus if you surprise them with, hey, we have this great shiny new object, we want to put it in production tomorrow. Yeah, that's painful. So be mindful of the people on the other side of this multi-sided dice, is what I would say.
Okay, great. What about the data challenges that Lieutenant Colonel Updegraff?
Okay.
Have you guys solved all those challenges already?
Oh God. Well, no. And there's more every day. I revert back to thinking of making, I don't know a nice way to say it, so I always say it, right? So if you don't have a data lake and you don't have your data integrated and you aren't using even the concept of data marts, you probably need to like back up a bit and or pick a project that's small and in a functional area, right? And so I'm probably not going to pick a project to use AI if I need data sources from 5 different business groups that maybe don't even like sharing data. But if I already have data in the lake and I can leverage the lake to be my data source, that type of project will move much faster. So that's that front. I will say for those, definitely do your research and homework on RAG and RAG architecture, because that's a bit of a new space. And I'm thinking a lot about this with like RAG verification and validation. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I could probably spend a half hour just on that topic. So I'm thinking that's actually part of why I'm here, is I'm learning, how do we address this, the massive amounts of data that we can apply AI to, and what are really great ways to do that with low risk.
Yeah, got it. Okay, that's good. It's always have to balance the political with the technical when you're dealing with the data stuff.
Yes.
Okay, just I'm going to come back to all of you for some other questions, but I want to give Mia a chance to talk a little bit about the technology perspective of it. Mia, from the Salesforce perspective, are you able to talk to us a little bit about how Salesforce might solve some of these challenges?
Yeah, well, thank you first and foremost, Paul, for the invitation to be here. I've heard a lot of what the USCIS and DHA have been discussing, and just for the audience, just in general. So, I spent almost 12 years in government. I was a CIO at USDA Rural Development, and then I was also the CIO at Federal Student Aid under the Department of Education. And these challenges around data are everywhere, right? Sure, people can probably close their eyes and point to a maturity scale and hope that they're truly there. But I think, as I think Chris said, there are things, or excuse me, Chad said that there are things that ultimately expose kind of, where you are and kind of where you shouldn't be. And as he talked about, there's been a huge investment with the customers across federal and DoD and even in the Intel space, that there's data lakes everywhere. The cool thing is that when you start thinking about Salesforce platform and the fact that we've embedded Agentforce into the platform, we have really, I think, turned the corner in terms of, we understand that when we're working with the public sector, that we're always going to be touching some data source that's not inside of Salesforce. So that's not the right slide deck. I sent the slides the other day, but that's okay. Either way, though, so let me just talk really quickly about like how these agents are different from any other technology. And so, there we go. We can go right there. Salesforce and Agentforce is basically undergirded with the Atlas reasoning engine. And so what that means is that the agents have the ability to reason and take action based on the data that you give it. And so either that's the policy, that's something that lives in a PDF, that's something that lives in a data lake, that's something that could live in a shared drive or a SharePoint site. So you see there at the bottom, Data Cloud is now what really allows us to go in and connect directly into the data sources. And that's what has happened with these data lakes, is that they're a great place to organize and collect all the data. The problem is that really taking action on them and getting the insight is very difficult in the flow of work. And so that is the differentiation that we make when we're talking about Salesforce. Also, kind of in contrast to co-pilots, which we kind of consider outdated, and chatbots, is that those technologies often struggle a lot with multi-step tasks. And so what Agentforce allows is that it can operate autonomously. And the way in which you build your agent, it's just like you would hire an individual. So I'm going to just take a moment and explain. So I want to hire, an individual to come in and work in my organization. Well, I know what role, right, it is that I desire for them to play. Then I need to be able to identify what are the data, or the data sources that I want them to have access to, just like you would with any new employee. And then you describe to the agent, then what are the actions that I want that agent to take, or what would that human being be doing in these systems or in this particular tool. And then guardrails. Chad, thank you for bringing that up, because guardrails are really important when you start talking about agents. So it's not so much what I think our public sector customers are often concerned about. It's not so much what the agent can do, but it's what you prescribe and describe what they can't do. That is really, really important. And testing those guardrails is you're getting that, again, all in a single interface. There's no code. It's all done in natural language, which I think is the kind of force multiplier when you're talking to customers who say, look, I have data maturity problems. And so this is where you really can use a platform like Salesforce to say, I have this individual that's going to be in the field, or I have, I think as Colby was mentioning, I may have someone that needs to triage a patient. Well, the great thing about having an agent with a human in the loop is that it's able to take that information, reason with the information, and then give that technician the next best steps based on policy, based on past practice, and things of that nature. So that's where I really think where we really, I think, turn the corner with our customers, understanding, first of all, how to develop an agent. Secondly, that you don't have to have all of your data in your enterprise figured out in order to use agents in a specific workflow, right? If that's for a specific organization or for specific people in your organization. I think there's a DHA example I would like to use that. So imagine that you could have an agent do all the pre-screening for like TRICARE eligibility, or it could review like prior authorizations and then tee up that clinical documentation that you said is everywhere in different types of documents. Well, that is possible because of Data Cloud, because Data Cloud doesn't care if the data is structured or unstructured. Now, it does take a human being to vet that, to make sure that the agent is providing the correct information. And then with USCIS, I know you guys have been ahead of the loop. I was admiring you all when I was in government, especially around DevOps. But think about like pre-validating immigration forms, or flagging missing documents based on a case type, or notifying an adjudicator of inconsistencies. So that's intelligence. That's not automation. And that's what, Paul, I think ultimately what we're constantly in conversation with our customers about, is that kind of changing their mindset about what we mean by intelligence versus automation, and the fact that you can put the two together.
That's great. So Mia, where you guys have a lot of free training on these types of things, is that included?
Yes.
Does it? So if people are interested in this, they can go out and get some more information on the platform. Is it?
Yeah, so thank you. Shameless plug here. So trailhead.com is our free training platform. And I say that again, it is our free training platform. If you are specifically interested in learning about AI or Agent Force specifically, what I'm really excited about, and look, the clock is ticking, but all of our AI certifications around Data Cloud, around Agent Force are all free until December 31st, 2025. And so we also have for our partners, and Chad and the Colonel should know this too, is that even for our partners that want to set up test environments to be able to, thank you, Skylar, to be able to go out and take a use case, set up an environment, and bang on that use case, see if you can fool the agent, see if you can make it do things that you don't want it to do. We have a strong partnership with AWS. If you have data that's sitting out in an S3 bucket, or I know some of our customers have Azure environments as well, but there's really no constraints right now in terms of being able to go and test this technology. And the fact that there's another slide. Can you go to the one that I think that has like the layers? Looks like the stack of layers with it. It says unified platform. I think this is what I'll kind of end on, Paul. This is really important because this basically is breaking down like how the platform is designed. I mean, everybody knows we're omni-channel. That's what's at the top. But in that next section where it says coming soon, public sector agents, those agents right now are actually deployed. But this is where, based on if you're in healthcare or if you do investigations and things of that nature, or you do loans, we have pre-built agents where we've done our homework and audited the platform to kind of understand what are the objects that are continually reused customer over customer, whether they're in state and local, whether they're in federal civilian. So you see here like automating renewals, or you'll see things like recommend a resolution or notify an eligibility outcome. These agents are pre-built, can certainly be customized or configured to your specific use cases, but you don't have to start from scratch. And I think that's the real takeaway here when we're talking about Agent Force.
That's a great overview, and I do hope that people go out and get some free training because you guys have a great training platform. And I like that you guys have really made sense of Agentic AI, and you have a full architecture for it. So that should be very promising for customers. So I appreciate everyone. I don't see any questions yet, so I'm going to give some questions. One of the questions that I would like to hear from each of you, and we'll just start over, is if there were one capability that was AI related that's not existing today, what would that be that you could use right now? So what AI capability is missing from your tool chest?
That's a great question.
Well, I'll speak up really quickly. It's coming. We don't have it today, but you do know that we oh God, why did the name just escape me? We just bought Informatica. And so the cool thing about the Informatica acquisition is that Agent Force needs kind of a central nervous system, but it also needs the ability to go and look at like the source of data, right? And for when we start talking about governance, right, that's where I think our customers are really kind of scratching their heads and having some, concern, right? Some consternation about, yeah, I've got all this data in my enterprise, but like I need to know the source of that data, like when that data was created, who it was created by, when it was changed, right? That doesn't exist today, but that is coming. And that was, I think, that tells me a lot about like the engineering team that is working on this platform, thinking about, and also the fact that we're engaging with our customers. We have user groups, we have customer forums where they're kind of sharing these things with us, but also sharing their requirements on, hey, I don't want to build this. Can you build it? Can we put this in the roadmap? So Paul, that's my 2 cents.
No, that's a great answer. Anyone
Thanks.
else want to chime in?
I'll speak more direct application within healthcare. So one of my favorite quotes is ages ago is that the patient is the most underutilized resource within medicine, sort of ironically. Physicians, providers, we're all overtasked. We can't actually truly get to the root causes of many of patients' complaints and issues with the current payment structure model of the U.S. healthcare system. And I think part of the solution, I think AI is definitely part of the solution, but one aspect of that is leveraging the patient in the time that they have. And so utilizing the physician time to essentially make sense of a distilled interaction between an AI agent and the patient. So essentially by the time that they get to the human provider, that everything is very well teed up, queued. Then it becomes much more almost like peer-to-peer interaction, because now the patient has been talking with this AI AI doctor, we'll say, and everything is queued up for the human doctor to really then focus on what are the top things that is actually impacting this patient for whatever the complaint is. And I think this would really make the efficiency of that interaction so much better, and actually address so much more in the context of the short time that human providers have with patients. And in some ways, I think it would indirectly promote some other concerns in healthcare data, like patient ownership of their data instead of healthcare system ownership of the data. That's a different conversation and problem, but I think it would lead to those types of discussions.
Oh, that's great. So I don't know if you guys got to see the last one of these that we did, but it was with windsurf. And if you look on just Google windsurf, they just got bought for 2.5 billion or some amount near that by Google. But they have that interaction but they interview developers like that, right? So the developer's like, hey, I want to do this. And then I'll ask the developer some questions, and then you get further and further down. But yeah, from the perspective of medical forms, they're pretty static. And then you probably don't get the depth of information that the doctor really needs once they get in the room with the patient. So I think that'll be a pretty neat use case for Agentic AI. Anything to add?
Well, I
Chad?
would challenge the Colonel to go and take a look at our health cloud. And if he doesn't see that requirement there, sir, submit it.
My perspective is a little different. I want cheap GPU. All these exciting things are awesome, but they're really expensive. Quick story. I'll leave the agency out of it, but we had an agency call us and say, hey, this is really expensive. How are you affording this? Come to find out, one of their developers left an AI service up and running overnight. And overnight, it cost them $25,000 just because they didn't shut off the machine. So I need cheap GPU. That's going to be really hot to make all this exciting stuff happen. And targeted small models to help us at the edge, right? I love all my CSPs. I love all my SaaS providers, but we need to get to the point where we have the ability to leverage small models to solve local, very specific problems, tactical problems, even out in the field, and not just from a homeland security perspective, but small models, I think, are a future that I'm really focused in on. I think I'm looking forward to seeing more traction in that space.
Now, Chad, are you talking about LLMs? Or are you talking about purpose-built machine learning models? Or
yeah, so I don't. It could be computer vision. It could be, there's lots of different needs. I recently saw a challenge. It's publicly available where the cartels, for instance, are using, drones on the border. And it would be really great if our drones had the ability to have, AI on board and to do some of their own decision making and counter those types of drones. That's still a bit of a ways out there. There's some really progressive companies thinking about that, but small models allow us to operate much closer to where the users are. And I think that's an area that I'm super interested in. And hopefully it would be significantly more affordable than working with the large language models.
Yeah. So that use case that you gave where it cost $25,000 overnight, what kind of model was it? Like, you don't need to tell me about the business part of it, but like, was it someone calling an LLM, or was it more of building machine learning model?
They were it was a stand-up of an agent, and I think they probably just needed to do a little bit more homework, because this isn't, if you put an agent in a death loop, the thing is, an agent doesn't need to sleep and an agent doesn't need to eat, so it's going to continue to solve that problem all night long, and it's going to use a significant amount of resources if you don't put guardrails on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it is a problem with a lot of the government agencies right now trying to figure out, hey, what is this going to cost? And figuring out how many tokens you're going to use, or how much it's going to cost to build a model. How often are we going to build it, and what specific parameters, how many instances of it, all that good stuff. So that's always a fun challenge to work through.
Paul, it's a conversation we're constantly having right now about like how many and what does the agent have to do, right? That is kind of, getting that meter, keeping that meter going, and making some decisions about like when you bring an agent into the workflow is really important for customers to be thinking about. I wish there was some guidance out there. Chad, if MIT has already solved this problem, please let us know. But would love to learn more about how we're going to figure that out.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a couple of questions. I want to try to distill them and get you guys to answer them real quick. Stephen says, output of AI becomes a data source. From a governance perspective, the output could potentially contain PII, with the government as source identification being placed in the metadata and restricted from use as input to additional AI. So how are you dealing with the output of AI and being consumed by AI?
Well, that's an interesting question. Go ahead, Chad.
No, I'll just what I would say there. So we were chewing. So to me, that fits into like data lineage, right? And so that's where my mind immediately goes. Is I think about I've probably spent too much time with attorneys in the last 2 years, because now they've like programmed me to think the way they think, and so they want, for instance, they want a decision tree, and they want to be able to walk AI through its journey and what it did, just as if you were putting a person on stand, right? And so in thinking about that with data lineage, maybe to this person's point, is that if a model changes data, right, you need to be able to show, and that needs to be very clear, that data was changed. And there are many ways to address data lineage that I think I would probably start to source and have them consider taking a look at.
All right, I think that's a great answer.
I'll add to that just about the metadata and the PII comment. There was a recent use case that we had where an individual was helping a customer, and because of the information that was needed from the customer, this is why I think it's important to consider, when using platforms, asking those questions about data masking. And about like the fact that I know on the Salesforce platform, so what you're looking at here in terms of these objects that are on the screen that Paul's showing, that's all of the underlying data there and metadata there is what is ultimately being searched and used in bringing back a response. The information that you go and grab using Data Cloud as an example also ultimately could become metadata if it is added into the file. And so that is absolutely correct. But this is where the use cases are really important in terms of like what information are you allowing it to consume as fact, or information you're just collecting, right? Which is somewhat different.
I would just add a layer of complexity to this too, because it has been mentioned. You're also going to run into federal records management policy law and individual agency derived regulations from that law too, which may be different across agencies. So that's going to add a complexity of what you do with the output from these models. So we haven't gotten there yet, but theoretically, if we integrated AI within the new federal health record, any output from that would 100% qualify in the records management plan without a doubt. I don't know exactly what type it would fall into, what categories, all different categories of different disposition schedules. I don't know where it would fall. It might depend on the output. I'm not sure. Maybe it's something that has to be discussed and building policy around as a unique type. But I think some of the, if you solve that complexity, I think some of the questions with the question in the chat are solved as well. Because if you can do that and management, store it and dispose of it correctly, then you've, I think, answered the question in the chat too.
Great, thank you. So I know that we could probably talk for hours with this group about this topic, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We are a couple of minutes over. I want to thank everyone for joining, especially our panelists and our audience. And if anybody has questions, please reach out to us. This is a very passionate subject for all of us. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care. Bye. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, everyone.